I'm not going to say we have a laundry list of things to talk about today, but we have quite a few topics that I did want to discuss. One thing that I forgot to bring up in a recent video was Austin Ainge being added to the front office, obviously coming over from the Boston Celtics. Some people view it as nepotism, and you could make that argument. But at the end of the day, the nepotism argument kind of applies more so to him ending up in Boston alongside, obviously, the one and only Danny Ainge. But him coming over here after he's kind of like learned the system and been over there and been productive doesn't really hold as much water. However, he's here. We also brought up Coach Wojo from the SLC Stars. He was the head coach there. And we replaced him with one of the assistants on the team. I cannot remember his name for the life of me in this moment. But I see his face in my head, and he looks kind of like Jason Terry. A little bit. But that's not the important part. Just seeing some interesting moves for the Jazz this offseason. Or offseason, we're still technically in the playoffs, but the Jazz is offseason. It feels like we're doing a lot of interesting things. Like there's some positive, there's some negatives. You have Austin A sitting there saying, "Hey guys, we're not tanking. We're gonna sit here and we want to fight. We want to get better." And the mantra for Will Hardy and the roster has always been, guys aren't going to be given minutes. They're going to have to earn them. And we could make the argument that some guys have deserved minutes and have not received them. But for the most part, that has rung true, particularly for the younger guys, the rookies in second year, and even the third year players. I feel like there's a storm brewing coming with this draft. And the player that we're going to segue into a short stint about is Ace Bailey. Before, I was just not the biggest Ace Bailey guy. When he dropped because his height was different, I didn't really take it too personal because to me, it was one of those things where, yes, it is a little white lie, but there was a time where a lot of players did that. They added 2 inches to their game, to their height because they wore shoes. Everybody plays basketball in shoes. You don't play basketball barefoot. I care more about your wingspan. And everybody started making a big deal about that. But I don't like the way Ace Bailey's lead up to the draft is playing out. In fact, I hate it. And I mulled over it quite a bit just to make sure I was going to be able to stay behind this decision for the foreseeable future. And things have just become very interesting. The conversations about him not wanting to work out with a buttload of teams just because he feels like he's too good for it and he wants to be able to go to a situation where he can be the guy. Red flag number one. Number two, Sharif Cooper's dad is allegedly his agent now. Why Sharif Cooper's dad is the person being your agent when he couldn't take care of his own son and put him in a league in a advantageous position, when in my opinion, while he didn't have the size, Sharif Cooper to me as an offensive weapon coming out of college was better than you. Just a thought, it was a surprising circumstance, a surprising situation to be brought to the light right there. But the reason why I really don't like Ace Bailey is because he thinks he's somebody that he's not. When somebody as a player or as a person knows themselves, that is the most positive thing that can happen to them in life, because they will never be able to put themselves into a position where it's disadvantageous to them without knowing that it's disadvantageous for themselves. We're looking at Ace Bailey right now. And between the draft drama and him not wanting to work out for teams and him wanting to be paid to do interviews with teams and him picking a player who's not in the NBA's father to represent him when he has no genuinely notable pull in the NBA community from my current understanding. Now that could change. Maybe there's something underwater behind the scenes that's going on. But to my knowledge, he has no advantageous pull. It just doesn't look well. He's not particularly the greatest spoken, but he does have passion for the game, and I can appreciate that. However, he thinks he's him, HIM. He is not, NOT. Now that doesn't mean I hate, I don't hate him. He's just a young player. He's just trying to, make it. He wants to be that guy. Who doesn't? You know what I'm saying? A lot of guys in high school were that guy. Then a lot of those guys that were really, 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 really good went to college, and they were that guy in college. But I would say he wasn't the best player on his own team. And if we're really going to nitpick, and I really want to talk about how much I dislike him, his mindset is, yes, you should feel like you're that dog, like you're the hunter, not the one being hunted if you're Ace Bailey. You should feel like you're a top 5 pick because you've earned that. But we're not going to act like we're not going to lie to ourselves and pretend like your handle is not underdeveloped, because it is, right? We're not going to act like your shot giant is acceptable because it's not. We're not going to sit here and act like the way you play is efficient because it's not. And we're not going to act like you aren't turnover prone and because you are. And you also love to turn the ball. Not only do you love to turn the ball over, you're a subpar passer by a wide margin. You're a ball stopper and not an efficient one. At the NBA level, we sit there and we look at some players and we're like, oh man, he's a ball hog. Oh man, he doesn't like passing. But at least he's about a bucket, right? At least he gets a bucket. I look at the shot chart for Ace Bailey in college, and I'm not one of those people that hates long twos. But when you're being forced to take a long two and you have an open teammate, and instead of resetting or doing a little bit of a give and go, trying to create something extra, swinging the ball somewhere else just to get it back so you can recook again, you just decide, you know what? I'm just inside the three-point line. Yeah, let me get that up because I'm not letting anybody else take this shot. Brother, what are we doing? You don't hit it at a high enough clip. You don't hit shots at a high enough percentage to take the shots that you take. Your handle is subpar. You're extremely turnover prone. You don't pass the ball. You don't really have great feel for the game or court presence. He has the makings of a type of player that I would have hated to hate, that I would have hated to play in AAU basketball at 8 a.m. on a Saturday morning. But at the same time, in organized, high school, college basketball, he's not somebody that inspires fear. And at the NBA level, he's certainly not going to inspire fear because there's no fear factor to him. He's not physically imposing. His frame is wiry. He's not as tall and as long as people assumed him to be. He isn't really navigating the media side of things particularly well. He has had a couple good interviews, though, more so. I want to say it was ESPN where he got brought on. They gave him a headset. And they were chopping it up with him. And it was actually a pretty decent read. I was able to gauge a little bit more about his personality. It made me feel a little bit more comfortable about who he is and the way he speaks. But at the same time, the player that he thinks he is and the player he exudes is not the player that we see on the floor. And that's the biggest issue to me. Because of that, obviously, I was a Trey Johnson guy when all the draft stuff was coming out and whatnot, and I was looking over a bunch of players. I like the efficiency. I like the frame. I like the size. I like the presence. Granted, he's not nearly as covered as Ace Bailey and the rest of those guys that are ranked above him currently, but I feel like he's a safe pick. Ace Bailey over the past week has gone from a slight gamble to me to an unsafe pick because I can't have your personality, your ego will be the death of your basketball career at that point if you're Ace Bailey, because you're going to reach a point where you are not the big dog anymore, where you are not number one, where you go in the gym and you have to outwork people that really work, people that really put in that time, people that really be in the gym, people that are the first guys in, even when they don't want to be, and the last guys out because they feel like they have to be. And I'm not going to call his work ethic into question, but looking at his handle, I poured over the tape because I thought I was being a little bit over the top. I thought I was over exaggerating. And so I watched game after game after game, raw tape highlights. I want to see the shots that he misses. I want to see the shots that he makes. I want to see the shots that he takes. And I didn't love it. I certainly didn't love it over Trey Johnson. And because of the way he's acting, and apparently, he's not very big on going to Utah because he wants to be, quote, the guy. I'm thinking of teams where he could potentially be the guy on. And it's like, we talking about the Wizards. I mean, I guess Alex Sarr had an opportunity. It didn't really go much of anywhere, but he will develop, obviously, going forward. Maybe the Pelicans because they're looking to make something shake and blow their roster up just a little bit. I don't know if they're going to go complete rebuild, but they're doing something there. No, I'm trying, and I just can't come up with a team that he could be their number one guy. Where I wouldn't even want him. He couldn't even be in competition to be the number one guy, the number one shot chucker on the Charlotte Hornets. He couldn't. LaMelo drastically outshoots him. And LaMelo can play make. Now, he's not a great defender, but that's more so by choice, similar to Ace Bailey in a lot of situations. But Ace, bottom line, I know I've dragged on this a little bit, but bottom line, Ace Bailey is not a bad player. But this past week has definitely hurt his draft stock. I've heard rumors about him like falling in the draft. I'm 85, 87% sure he's going to fall in the draft. He's losing money because of the decisions he's making. He's not valuable enough, and he is not the consensus number one. So he can't be out here acting the way that he is and being portrayed the way that he is, because it's going to hurt his stock in the beginning. And depending on how much it gets hurt and who exactly feels some sort of way about the way he's been interacting with the media, or lack of having interaction with the media, and what his team and agents are saying, well, it could have some long-term lasting effects. And you don't want to do that when you're trying to come in the league and make millions of dollars and be a really great player. Ironically enough, the love of people saying, oh, he's similar to Paul George, that leads us into our next segue, because I've branded on Ace Bailey long enough. He's not a bad player. I just don't want him in Utah. Let me go and say that. All right. Paul George. Matter of fact, let me just, because it was Andy Larson. I was on Twitter when I saw the post. I thought it was a parody account that made it, but it was Legion Hoops that posted it, talking about the Jazz and 76ers discussing a trade that would send Paul George to Utah. The trade better not go through. I don't want to see Paul George in Utah. I don't know how to tell you. I don't know. And I'm not a Paul George hater. There was a time where Paul George was that guy. He was one of them ones. He hasn't been one of those ones for some time, though. Clippers Paul George was okay. Thunder Paul George was better. Everybody remembers Pacers Paul George, but the way things are looking, he's not going to be the best pacer after this year. Tyrese Halliburton is leapfrogging him with all the game winners that he's hit, especially since they forced a Game 7 now. Yeah, as long as they don't get blown out of the water. If they win, it's definitely over for them. But Paul George is not the player that he was before. I don't want to take on all that debt for Paul George. I don't need that in my life. The 76ers overpaid him, and now they need to deal with the consequences of that. They're going to suck, and they can take it, right? I'm perfectly fine sucking with young guys and watching them get better. I don't need to watch an old man suck and get worse. His efficiency last season was bad. He looked uncomfortable. And the way he was talking on his podcast, you would have thought everything was everything. It was not everything. The advanced analytics, the base analytics, nothing is beneficial to say, oh, yes, he just kind of was struggling a little bit. He got comfortable, or he's going to get comfortable, and he's going to be right back to the borderline prime Paul George that we are accustomed to. That version of him's gone. We're watching him wash out in real time. And if the Jazz sit here and bring him to Utah, that would be one of the most egregious things they could do. And that's one of those things where, like, the front office additions were interesting. Depending on who they get in the draft, could make things interesting. I personally don't think we need to draft all 4 picks. If anything, let's go ahead and throw together our two second round picks, or better yet, 2 second rounders, our first rounder. Let's move back in the first round and get somebody's late first round pick next year. Let's do that. Because we're going to reach a point where we have so many young guys on the roster, somebody has to be the odd man out. So we're just going to draft somebody to put them on the bench and make them the odd man out? To put them on the SLC stars? That just doesn't really make sense to me. Because it comes to a point where there's only but so many minutes to go around, and there's only one basketball. We have a lot of guys on the team. We have a lot of young guys that we're expecting to take steps forward. The more people you add in that need to be acclimated to the system and shown how to get the job done, and we have to watch them also try and get the job done and navigate things on their own, there's too many things. We're going to be spread thin, somebody's not going to get the attention that they need, and somebody's not going to reach their true potential. And I would hate to see that happen, especially with all the draft capital that we do have. Just keep parlaying it back. There's no rush to sit there and do that. We're not going to be a championship caliber team this year anyways. I would like to see us compete and be a team that, we're not getting blown out by 20 every game. Now, if it's a team that's just out there and terrifically on par with all the contending teams, and we lose by 20, 25 points, it is what it is. But I don't want to see us sit here and play the Wizards or the Hornets or the Pelicans, and we lose by 25 points. That shouldn't happen. It shouldn't. We lose in comfortable games. We lose to the Denver Nuggets by 8, 12 even. Cool. I think I can gain a lot from that game and go over tape and actually enjoy watching the film. But bringing Paul George here does nothing for us. There's not been a single analyst that's talked about Paul George getting moved to Utah yet where I said, man, He made a good point. Why would I want Paul George? Maybe I'm being too harsh. Maybe I feel a little too emotional about it. That's always possible. I'm one of those people where I can be openly criticized, and as long as you're making sense and you're not being insulting, you're trying to get to a point, you're trying to articulate why your thought process is whatever it is, I'm always open ears, or at least I like to be. I like to attempt to be, and I like to check myself from time to time because sometimes I do be wilding. We all do. We all have those times where we make an egregious take. I said Thunder in 6. It looks like it's gonna be Thunder in 7 because the way the Pacers played in Game 6 was crazy. But, you know, everybody has an interesting take every now and then. But I definitely don't want Paul George in Utah. Let me know in the comments if I'm bugging out or if you guys feel the same way because I don't think I'm being too harsh when I say it. I just don't think the fit makes sense. I don't see the positives that come out of it. I just think it's a waste of money. And if we do add him, to me, that doesn't mean we get better. Because in order to match the salary and in order to make things work from both a financial standpoint and from a team building standpoint, somebody worthwhile has to go. Arguably somebody that's going to help us win more, that could potentially help us win more games than Paul George. Borderline guaranteed. And just to sit there and make that deal is crazy to me. It just doesn't make sense. And lastly, to finish things off so that we don't have too much of a long video, I know I usually bordered on 30 minutes. This one's going to be closer to that 20-minute range. One trade that I did see that was kind of interesting that seemed to have some level of validity, but I'm not the biggest on it personally, is between the Jazz and the Lakers, with the Lakers receiving Walker Kessler, Colin Sexton, and the 43rd pick in this year's draft in exchange for Austin Reeves, Jared Vanderbilt, who would be returning, obviously, Dalton Connect, and a 2030 first round pick swap that is top 3 protected. This makes sense if you're the Lakers, of course, because you need a consistent scorer that's a viable offensive threat in Colin Sexton. You need somebody that can shoot the ball. Austin Reeves is solid, but he has a lot of inconsistent games, and he's definitely a lesser defender than Colin Sexton. Colin Sexton brings that championship intensity every time. When he first got brought into the league and he first got drafted, he said, LeBron, I can't wait to come play with you in Cleveland. And that was the same year LeBron left, so they never shared the court together once. But this would give him the opportunity to, on a team that's actually capable of winning games, he would be able to start alongside Luka Doncic. And honestly, that would be a very phenomenal offensive trio. I would root for the Lakers to win games. I would love to see it happen. Walker Kessler, obviously, really one of the only cornerstones that I believe is definitely somebody that we could have long-term on a championship team. Last year, 11 points, 12 boards, 2.5 blocks. He was 66% shooting from the field, roughly. He wasn't really great from the free throw line, but we saw that coming. And he doesn't really have a 3-ball, and we also saw that coming. But elite shot blocker, really solid in the pick and roll when it comes to finishing, reliable offensive rebounder defensively. Obviously, we know what he is. He moves his feet really well. I love Walker Kessler, and I don't want him to go. But every single time there's a rumor with Walker Kessler, and they're like, oh, who's going to get him? Who's going to get him? Who's going to get him? The Lakers always seem to end up in the talks. And the way they just seem to have the closed door discussion to get Luka Doncic, it wouldn't surprise me if I wake up tomorrow morning and all of a sudden they have Walker. For them, this deal makes a lot more sense than it does for us. I'm tired of everybody sitting there saying, oh yeah, we get a lot of young talent. We get a lot of young talent. I'm tired of young talent. Give me one bulldog and let's roll. Let's just go crazy. Let's just do what we can. And if we suck, we did our best. But the whole, let's give some more young guys. Let's get some more young guys. Let's get some more young guys. Let's get a lot of draft capital. Let's build up the stock so we can make a run later on. I'm tired of them pushing the ball further and further down the field, down the court. I'm sick and tired of it. And Austin Reeves, interesting pick. I think he would be a fan favorite when he comes here. And maybe you could argue that him having some more room to operate alongside Lauri Markkanen would allow him to change the way he plays his game a little bit. Now, they wouldn't have the front court depth to, allow him to get cooked, but at the same time, it would allow for him to reach a different version of himself that he hasn't seen yet, I do genuinely believe. When it comes to Jared Vanderbilt, well, maybe he'll learn how to shoot. We know what he is defensively, and he's finally healthy again. So that's, the only positive realistically. But without shooting, there's only but so much you can do with him. Dalton Connect obviously is probably going to be looking to get moved regardless because, I mean, they almost gave him up for Mark Williams, or they tried to before he failed the physical or whatever it was with the Charlotte Hornets. So Dalton Connect getting traded is definitely a extreme possibility. It's probably extremely likely. I don't know when it will end up happening or if it happens to the Jazz, but I do think that probably this offseason he will end up going somewhere. If he stays, I'd be surprised. But that would mean they just repaired their relationship, and that would be lovely to see. A young guy reaching out and realizing what the business side of the NBA is kind of sucks. But Dalton Connect got that full experience and then came back to his team and then got to see some playoff action. So we'll see how that, changes with time or what comes of it. But I don't necessarily love this package at all. I definitely don't think it's even. It certainly isn't even because the Lakers will become a bona fide championship team if they make this trade. Jared Vanderbilt and Dalton Connect are probably worth Colin Sexton. Probably. Maybe a little bit more than Colin Sexton. Maybe you could say Colin Sexton and the first round pick because Colin Sexton's defense isn't the same as Jared Vanderbilt's, but he's a better shooter and a more efficient scorer than Austin Reeves. And Jared Vanderbilt is a non-factor in this conversation. Dalton Connect didn't have enough pull immediately, and probably over the next 2 seasons, he's still going to be developing, so he won't either. The 2030 first round pick swap, it doesn't really do much for me. So then you have Walker Kessler, and there's not any serious draft compensation being switched out for him right here. And after what we saw that trade was with Desmond Bane, granted, the Magic still got better and they did need to add Desmond Bane. He was the perfect addition for their roster this offseason. Kudos to their front office. But they gave up a lot more than they needed to. I saw it was something crazy like they have Cole Anthony, like Kentavious Caldwell Pope, 4 first round picks and a pick swap or 2. Like that was egregious to me. Desmond Bane is not worth nearly all that. But it happened. And I think both teams actually did get better from making that move. So maybe the Jazz will end up seeing a trade like that, and that's what ultimately gets made. But I do believe that there's going to be a very surprising and both happy and sad, so a bit of a melancholy deal that gets pulled, whether it is with the Lakers or some other team. I just think that that's definitely coming in the works for the Jazz this offseason. If you made it this far in the video, I appreciate you for watching this far. Go and smash that like button, subscribe, turn on post notifications, and as always, good morning, good evening, and good night, no matter where you're in the globe watching. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.